1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, what we're going to do is there's some new people here. These people are new. Whether they matter or not, that's beside the point, I guess. I still think we should recap a little bit about what we did last week. Do we have, you have all your forms and everything? First, let me tell you that these are the programs, by the way. The disks aren't the programs. The disks are just the machine assistant that run the program. You know, the program is the thing that gives you the step-by-step motions you have to go through to fix the person, right? If you want to find out the difference between our program and somebody else's program, the difference is basically that most other programs are really, you know, just kind of like a blind, leading the blind type of program, which means that there is some type of gauge that they're using to measure the body as a performance ratio. In other words, if you go to take a blood test, for instance, and the person's triglycerides are up to 570, okay, and the cholesterol is up to 800, and the doctor begins to use that as a gauge. This is call, this is try. The doctor says, aha, we must work a program for you because these are too high, way out of normal standards, and you can get hurt. You could definitely have heart disease, heart palpitations, etc., whatever, okay? And now we have to launch a program, and the end of the program is that your triglyceride will be down to 100 and your cholesterol will be down to 200, and I will be happy. So why is it, can you tell me, that after the person gets down to this level, he's still got problems, and he's still upset, and he's still sick? Now, I'm not saying don't feel better. I'm saying that he's still complaining. He's still saying, what about this? What about that? What about this? I got a million questions to ask you, doctor. The doctor freezes, right? He says, well, where do we go now? Make your cholesterol go back up, or maybe make it go down? Or, you know, in other words, he's got to come up with some other kind of yardstick because there's other questions. The reasons why he has other questions is because the human being is operating on at least 128 different tracks of data, you see. Blood is just one track. You've got a mental track, you've got physical tracks, you've got emotional tracks, you've got endocrine track, you've got heart, blood, you've got hair, you've got urine, blah, 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 color, sound, tactile, magnetic. I have a whole list of them in a grade chart book. If you got to get your hands on a grade chart book, it's at the back of the book. It'll give you the whole list of 128 different fields of perception for a human being. So let's face it, if you handle this part of it and your blood's doing fine, they could very easily jump to another track and have trouble over there. You could very easily get an insane person to have this kind of blood level reading. Okay, so the important thing here is to just throw all this other kind of thinking out the window. Even though it's, all right, so, you know, that's a very legitimate measure of a problem for an individual, and it's a nice yardstick. It's just the kind of thing that we're going to run into trouble with because we're trying to do this, we're really trying to accomplish that holistic that everybody's been looking for, you know. Yeah, I want to handle the whole body. I want to handle the whole thing. You know, well, how do you handle the whole thing? The only way you can handle the whole thing is know about the whole thing. What it's doing, why it's doing it, where it's going. And then you got a shot at it. Otherwise, I've gone in so many clinics where you see a sign outside that says Holistic Wellness Center. You walk in and the guy's doing a urine and saliva and a blood test, and this is really advanced, you know. Well, he's handling 2 tracks out of 128, and the people are still, the question marks are coming. Question marks, like that. So what we do is we built this program to turn these question marks into exclamation points. And I heard him exclaim as he wrote on a site. Merry Christmas. Can anybody argue with Santa Claus that he wishes people a Merry Christmas? I doubt it. He's so sure of it. He's so unflaggingly sure about what he wants you to have, a Merry Christmas. So what he called that is resolution. It's really funny. This is a very interesting statement because at the turn of the century, there was a little character called Buster Brown. And every year, he would come out with his resolutions for the year. And that's where New Year's resolutions came from the comic strip Buster Brown. Every year, he would have a whole thing that would say, resolve that from now on, X prime equals Y to the 2, and that's it. It means like, I am never ever going to, drink milk with a straw again for some odd reason, okay? So he's got this resolution. That means that now he has an unflagging, unwavering principle that sticks, okay? Problem is when you get a sick person is they have a marked degradation of resolution ability. They have, they're not really too sure about what they think. They're sick. If you ask them a question, they say, well, I don't know, when did you start having this problem? Well, gee, it was I think it was about 5 years ago, but actually I'm not sure. That's why I'm here. Where's the pain? Well, it's over here, but sometimes it's over there. And, how many doctors have you seen? How many x-rays have you? You ask them all kinds of questions, and you get none of these. You don't get any exclamation points. And these are the simple questions. Imagine getting to the hard questions, like how many chromosomes are out of alignment, in the left liver cell, north. By north, we would give him a latitude to the 10th power. And sure, he'd tell you. You think you're crazy, right? Don't get too, high speed with these guys because you'll blow them right out of your office. You got to start. In fact, there was one. Where was I? Up in New York, and I was doing the American Society. The ultramoleculars. The ultramoleculars, and we did a scan, and it came out liver. And the guy says, I just can't believe it. How could it be that accurate? I said, accurate? Are you kidding? This is ridiculously vague to me. Liver is like only one of 20-some organs. What's so accurate about that? Accurate to me is picking the exact longitude, latitude, time of day, and, down to the nanosecond. That's accurate. So it's just a relative feature of a sick person. To a sick person, just being on planet Earth is accurate. He just can't define very well. And he definitely can't make any resolutions because he doesn't know about how one part of the body connects with another part. Very, very unsure. And if when asked how these parts relate or connect to one another, he definitely has no information on it. In other words, the computer breaks, and he can't even tell you why. Now, that's a bad machine. I like my computer. It breaks, it says 1060, and then you list 1060, and it says, well, listen, you can't put your cross-chain coordinator in upside down. Oh, thank you. This doesn't do that. This machine will break and not tell you why. It'll just give you the effect of the break. Anger, upset. I hate you. Why? I don't know. I don't like the way you look. The old Niagara Falls syndrome. Did you ever see that? Where the guy slowly I turned. All you had to do was say Niagara Falls and he'd beat anybody up. Because that was the button word. He didn't know why he hated you. He just knew that in Niagara Falls, his wife left him and ran away with his partner, and you remind him of that by saying Niagara Falls. That's just like a hypnotic mechanism. The point is that what we have to do to fix a person is to find the break, number one. Identify the break, number two. Number three, fix the break. Now, before we fix any break, we have to be extremely resolute. about it. Man walks into office. Man says, or let's say woman. I just had one. Sold a computer system to a person. Came up with, lady walks in, says, got terrible pain in her thighs. Pain in thighs. Very good target. Oh, she did a great job. She got a major complaint. One of them, pain in thighs. She said, if I could just get rid of the pain in the thighs, I'd feel great. In other words, we found the break. Beautiful. Now, what is causing the break? We go to the computer and we take another readout, and the thing comes back, sex organs. Very interesting. What the holy heck did the pain in the thighs have to do with sex organs? Well, if you're talking to a normal layperson who's sick, they don't know. They don't have any idea whatsoever. That's why they're sick. If you talk to a monitor who's just started the program, they don't know either. And if you talk to a monitor who's really untrained, they would have absolutely no way to even guess at this kind of a thing. Or maybe a really, really well-trained doctor could guess it. Let me think about it a while. You know, that kind of thing. But then he'd be guessing, right? You talk to the patient or whatever, the person you're working with, and you find out that they don't really have any idea how these two things could be related. What you have to do is use textbooks, information, or whatever, and find out, how does the pain in the thighs have anything to do with a sex organ? Now, I can think of about a dozen ways, okay? But I'm not sure I'm right either, as far as this person's concerned. I could make a guess. In other words, if I was pretty educated, I could say, well, now hold it a second. Sex organs. Well, maybe in certain cases where the person gets an autotoxemic state, they may dump poisons from pregnancy into the legs. So my next question back to the lady would be, have you ever been pregnant and had trouble? Maybe she says, no, I've never been pregnant. I can go around circles all day long trying to figure out, how these two things relate. The easiest way to do it is to educate the person. Get them to read about the sex organs and the relationship with what are basically thighs, bones and muscles. So you really have a kind of a 8 for sex organs and a 9 for bones and muscles. That's how our program looks at it. But what I'm trying to explain to you here is that there's a connection in this person's body that's broken. It's chopped. Now, I don't know how many people, if you work with computers and you get a break, how you feel at the moment of the break. There's a little bit, maybe, if you're used to programming, you don't mind it too much. But if you're not used to programming, you get kind of upset when there's a break. There's a certain feeling that you get. Right, Fiona? Come on, Fiona. You're the most experienced person at breaks that I know of. True, right? No? Tell us how you feel when the computer says break and starts flashing off and on like...
Just click like this and start again.
Start again, okay. But tell us how you felt when you weren't sure what it meant. Upset. Mad. Like, I got a break. Well, what happens is, since the body, think about this for a minute. The energy in the body travels at light speeds, 186,000 miles a second per second. Okay? Now, that's 186,000 miles per second. How far is it from your top of your head to your toes? Nowhere near 186,000 miles, right? It's probably about, 72 inches for you? No, you're not 6 feet. How tall? 5'3". Oops, Jesus. Clothesline me. So, the point is this. You got the top of the head where the person's thinking, the brain, right? Okay? And you got the toes down here. Now, you would think, or you would expect, that the energy from the top of the head would get to the toes very rapidly And if it could travel that fast, it should be the same energy, correct? In other words, whatever you think here should be here. But how come, can you tell me, somebody could be 98 degrees up here at the top of their head and 54 degrees down here, showing a marked drop of energy from here to here? Well, the only way that can happen is very simple, is that there's breaks all along the corridors of energy down the body. The more breaks, the slower the energy. And by the time it gets down to the feet, the thing's ice cold. It's actually lost all of its protons. It's lost all of its power. And that's why you have cold feet. Now, I'll tell you, we had people in here the other day, and we did scans on them, and we ran them through this check sheet for documentation. And I had a lady, in fact, that lovely older lady that was in here had a variation from head to foot of 17 degrees. That's a lot of degrees difference, you know. A whole lot of degrees difference. That means that somewhere as the energy is moving down the body, in the corridors of the body, from here to here, energy is being lost. It's being broken. There's something stealing the energy, breaking it, breaking the transmission. And instead of one smooth wire from here to here, you have a broken series of energy where as the energy has to move along, all of a sudden it hits a blank spot and has to shoot the gap. It has to...
Would that be resistance, though? Resistance.
Absolutely. The resistance is coming this way. There's an outside force setting up a resistance pattern. Now, metals, any kind of compound in the environment, air, any element at all has its own relative resistance. It has its own conductance. In other words, it has a value to it. Some things conduct better than others. For instance, you take a wristwatch or something like that and put it up to something, it'll conduct. If you take, like rubber gloves, they don't conduct very well. Fat conducts very poorly. And however, protein conducts very well. Water is the premier conductor. In other words, if you have a really good supply of water, you should be able to just go zap like that and have your energy. Move, feet, takes off. However, believe it or not, even though if I said move feet, my legs start to move, there's a loss of energy from here to here if my feet are cold. If somebody says to you, geez, my feet are cold, and you say, walk over to that wall, and she starts to walk. Well, you don't detect it, but there's a very, very minute delay there's a lag in there in fractions of a second. You can't see it because it looks like she's doing what you want. But all you got to do to detect this is ask the person a question and say, Madam, how old are you? And the minute you can count 1001, 1002, and you're counting all the breaks. All the breaks. And when she comes back with the answer, 49 or something like that. Well, you count the seconds or the splits in the seconds, and you'll find out that the amount of lag is the amount of break, and you could almost correlate that lag to a loss of temperature from here to here. It's proportional.
It's not psychological.
No. it's actually electrochemical. They can't get at the information because there's breaks in the wires. It's like, for instance, if you try to place a phone call and all static on the line kept breaking off and on. Well, the conversation would necessarily take a longer time because you'd have to be hello, chronically just trying to establish communication. A person who is really well connected and knows themselves inside and out, when they're asked a question, boom, the answer comes right back. Because they're, like I said, light's traveling 186,000 miles a second. From the brain cortex to the mouth. It's not that much distance, You should be able to just say, bam, that's the answer and that's it. But there's a lot of interference in there, a lot of static. Now, when the static builds up so high that this person is at a loss to tell you very, very important things about their case, they get sick. okay? At points where the interference gets incredibly high, they're at a loss to even tell you who they are. That's insanity. So in other words, insanity, interesting that interference and insanity started the same word, but is on a pole. In other words, sickness is really kind of like a neophytic state of insanity. The more you use that, if you don't overcome that sickness and you allow that interference to keep interfering with your mechanisms, after a while you become insane. Now look at an older person after a while, like people with Alzheimer's condition, you know, that kind of thing, have been interfered with tremendously in their lifetime. They become senile to the point where they just flake off. They don't even know where they are, or who they are, or whatever. So it's what they call senile dementia. You know, they're just disconnected. Totally. But what we're trying to do, as I say, is make those connections for the person. Now, when you first start the program up, on a grade 0 basis, there's roughly 80,000 possible breaks. Okay, so you got your hands full. The reason why I call it grade 0 is because these are simple types of breaks. You're going to be a mechanic who is going to be putting together, you know, you're going to get your little soldering iron there, and the lady's going to come in, you're going to be a good, big hero, because she's going to say, my God, I've got a stomach ache. You're going to run the program. The program is going to come up with a core, and it's going to say, ill effects of family disputes. And you're going to say, now what does a stomach ache have to do with, you know, having arguments in the family? And she's going to say, well, you mean to tell me that I can get a stomach ache from having an argument? They don't know. If they knew, they wouldn't have that stomach ache, because they'd know how to handle that. But they don't know. They don't know that that can happen, that when you argue that the cul-de-sacs of the colon and the stomach itself are just basically a mirror of the brain and reflect on a one-to-one value with the convolutions of the brain. Have you ever looked at the brain? It looks like the entrails. The stomach looks like the brain with the entrails spilled out, look like what you got up here. And your brain, on a positive and negative bias, positive over negative, and the stomach runs like this, negative, positive. And if you get upset, here's your head, you get upset over here and you're worrying about your finances, and your left brain gets a little buzzy, it reflects to the left side of the stomach. And if you get over here, the right side, you're worried about whether or not you're going to get to go out on a date with certain good-looking woman, and the right side starts to buzz, you know, and it just reflects on a one-to-one basis. A lot of people never knew that their feet had a lot to do with their shoulders, or the material, the proteins up here would have anything to do with the protein down there. However, if you looked at it, it's all connected on the same rubber band. I mean, if you pull this, you're going to stretch down there. If you're weightlifting, I got a lot of weightlifters who complain they've got sore feet. I said, how can I have sore feet? I'm working it over here. I said, well, look, get a rubber band for a minute. I'll hold it on this end. You hold on that. I said, what? I said, do you feel any tension down there? Yeah. I said, don't let it go. But that's what happens. The tension builds up down here because of what you're doing up here. It's a reflexive system. And it works this way, too. You've got a rubber band-like mechanism going this way.
Yes. Question?
Yeah.
When you say reflex action, is that in those corridors of energy or in the musculature?
It's in the musculature, as well as, you know, you've got similar paths. You've got electromagnetic paths. Like when I used to go get a massage, you rub down this lady, she'd do this nerve rub, you know. She'd do like, rub the muscles, and then she'd rub the nerve, the electromagnetic field. That just drive me crazy. Never touch your body, just go through the... I mean, it's some kind of Ouija board or something, you know. I start going around the table, you know. She had yes at one end of the table and no at the other end. Will he pay me? Okay. All the grade system is, okay, Grade 0, as I said, has 80,000 specific types of breaks, and then as you go to 1, what you start to get into is more complex connections. You start really like attacking and identifying more complex types of breaks, whereas you just have a very simple break that you're repairing. Like, gee, how can the sex organs have anything to do with the legs? You may, on grade 1, have breaks that involve 4 different concepts at the same time. In other words, what does the break between the sex organs and the legs have to do with the break between the nose and the ears? Which is a little, little kind of an interesting, Jesus, what do they have to do with it? It gets a little confusing. Gee, I guess I'd have to know how to do these first before I'd know what this was. Just looking at anything complicated, you'd see that, well, if you had any kind of a matrix of energy, pattern or weave or whatever, you'd have to start at one end of it and say, well, let me see how this works now, and that's what grade 0 is, just identifying that you even have a pattern, identifying that you even have a break. Is there a break? Now, if a person can't tell you a relationship of their energy to their energy output, to the readout, then there's a break. If a person comes in and says to you, I've got a headache, you say, fine. Now, would you please say that again in another way? I want you to say that on the SAF. And you write up the SAF. And the SAF doesn't say I have a headache. The SAF says I have a stomach ache. Now you're going to say to them, now wait a second, wait a second. You're telling me this on this side, you're telling me headache on this side, and you're telling me stomach ache on this side. Now which one is right? This has been the big problem. Who do you attack, the headache or the stomach ache? Well, basically they're both right. It's just that the stomach ache and the headache have something in common. But it hasn't been revealed yet. What does the stomach have to do with the headache? And they may not know. Now, a lot of the people who have had success with the program have basically done this. They had a very deep background in physiology, knew a lot about endocrinology, like Dr. Stern and certain other people that we had working with the program, and could come up with these relationships very easily. Oh, yes, well, I know how you can get a headache from the stomach. Well, tell me, the patient would say, because they didn't know, That, well, it's very simple. When you have an acid indigestion, the pressure of acid in the stomach can very easily backfire into the system and cause the pressure to build up in the head. Very logical and very chemically feasible, but wrong. Remember, it's their case. It's not his case. He's running his case. He's giving you a reason why it could happen to him. He's not giving it. In other words, what he's doing is he's dubbing over the case and telling the individual what they should think. Whereas what should happen is to discover exactly what this mechanism is or what this actual break is, the person running the program should allow the patient to examine materials that will educate him up to the awareness of knowing this himself, so that then he can understand it on his own and then refer back to the experience or information stored in his memory that proves this. Remember, this is just an idea. I ask, how can a stomach ache affect the head or cause a headache? That's an idea. He's going to tell me how and then give me the actual experience of proof, where he says, yes, it can happen. You know why? Because one time I went on a drinking binge and I drank and drank and drank, and my stomach was just so bloated and full, I woke up the next morning with a headache. What do you think? I say I love it. I think it's a good one. I'll work with that. He's telling me he's got a legitimate experience that proves that these two things match. You're like 90% of the way home. Because what you've done is you have definitely rectified these ideas. The biggest mistake you can make is have a person come in, tell you he's got a headache, and give him stomach drops. Or have a person come in, tell you he's got a headache, and give him headache drops. What do you call that? What kind of medicine is that? It's allopathy or allopathic medicine. In other words, what you're doing is you're saying, well, again, you're just treating one track, the physiological track, you know. Okay, well, we'll just hit that. And then when it doesn't go away, the next step is to send you over to the head shrinker. Well, that doesn't work. The only way you can work it is to get known information and utilize it with your experience and expertise and create an actual bridge. In 1870, Sir Henry Wheatstone invented a machine called the Wheatstone Bridge. And what it was a series of resistors that allowed ordinary human beings to test other human beings' psyche. In other words, every time somebody would think of something, the bridge would register the brakes. In other words, the person would say, what do you think about cats? Love them. The machine would do nothing. What do you think about dogs? Hate them. Bam. Break. What does that mean? Well, obviously, something about dogs had happened to this individual to cause him a symptom that he couldn't identify, associate, make any sense out of, and still to this day does not know why he has a pain in his backside. Been being treated for hemorrhoids for 20 years, and here he has been bitten by a dog. In other words, he had a break on that subject. We may have, in upper level cases when you're doing an allergy, many times a person come in and say, I have hemorrhoids, and the thing will come up on the top, dogs. And we say to him, what the holy heck can hemorrhoids have to do with dogs? And believe me, he doesn't know. I mean, how could he know? Really? So where do we go? What do we do? You know, I mean, what could we do at that point when a guy's in an allergy program, he wants to know why he's got these allergies, and here he's been bitten by a dog on the backside, and he's got hemorrhoids now, and, you know, that's an actual break. We found it, it's workable, it's wonderful. We give him dog medicine, right? We try to cure his dog allergy. And he may get better. And you know what happened? More and more these little concepts move closer and closer together. And you see him itching back there. Boy, these things, man, what are they doing to me, you know? And what's happening is the pieces of that dog that are still in there from 25 years ago are starting to come out to the surface. And the whole experience is starting to retrace, we call it. It's an automatic retrace. It's starting to unwind. It's starting to release itself. And the brain cortex, the mind, and the visual part of the person's scanning ability can now see it. But they still don't believe it. So once they get to the point where they say, hey, I know something very interesting. When I was a kid, I got bit on the backside and blood was dripping. I went to the bathroom and I didn't know anything happened. And I sat in the toilet and there was blood dripping out. And I remember I went to my mother, I was really scared. And she said, hey, a dog. This is kind of a weird example. She said, hey, this dog bit me and there's blood all in the toilet. I remember that picture vividly. That's very interesting. What's that got to do with now? Why would you have hemorrhoids from having a dog? The dog bit you years ago. Well, see, that's funny. I have a dog. I have a pet dog now. And every time I pet that dog, I get hemorrhoids. Well, what are hemorrhoids? Well, it's blood. It's dropping. Boing, it's like the associative ability of the individual is very, very powerful. If you don't work with it, you're definitely going to get no place fast, because most of this ridge of energy here, this condition, is wrapped up with concept. In other words, somebody's got to admit that it's even there first. So, what does this part of the condition have to do with this part? Well, yeah, this part was visible. All this is not visible to that person's understanding. It's clouded. You've got to run a program to let him see this stuff. And that's what this whole program is all about. Just getting that eraser and taking that off of there. And we do it with the homeopathic stuff. That's one way that we do it. We do it. First thing we do is we get them lined up on that core. He comes in, he says he's got a headache. We line him up on that stomach, and we get what we call core resolution, which means that he's ready to roll. He's with you. He's saying, yeah, that's right. Wow, man, yeah, stomach ache. Give me the headache. Okay, well, let's run it. Bingo. That doesn't mean the case is over. You give them the homeopathic stuff to unwind all of the information on that file, the connection. All the times the jerk's been drinking and getting sick and all the different things that have happened to him in his life to the bottom of the pile, to the real answer to the question. Why the heck did he do that in the first place? And you don't know the answer to that. How could you? You didn't live his life, did you? Any charlatan that goes out saying that he knows what this answer is an idiot. And if he's not spotted for a charlatan and cordoned off or quarantined, will hurt people, because he's going to misdirect their attention to some other reason. And they're never going to find this out, which is, how the holy heck can you have a break between these two things in the first place? How'd you do it? I mean, I'd say a guy, like, for instance, you give a guy this really kind of a neat toy to play with, and he's supposed to put it together himself, and if you ever do that with a kid, and you say, here, put this thing together, come back about 2 hours later, and you say, what the heck did you do? How'd you screw this on here? This doesn't go over here. And you got to take that off and put that on the other part, and it's all backwards and upside down. Because that's all he knows, And this over here, this stomach thing and this head thing, well, these operatives over here, the stomach and the brain, have to do with holding back electricity, holding back current. They have to do with collision, upset, misunderstanding. Like the kid that I ran, the kid that I hit a kid on here was unbelievable. One of these, just like it's a fourth pro. Blew this kid out. I mean, I made more gains with him on one silly chain than any doctor made on him in 30 years. It finally came to him what happened when he was a kid. And he kept saying, he says, well, gee, I don't, he goes, I don't know. He kept going back and back and back and back. And finally got to the bottom thing, and when he was a kid, his dad took him out in the boat and said, be careful of he was saying, be careful of the sea buoys. The little kid was driving the boat, and he said, be careful of the sea buoys, the little things. And the kid kept thinking he was talking about these sea boys. really intense. He said, yeah, I remember now. He goes, I was scared out of my wits. I couldn't sleep. He goes, I couldn't sleep and I couldn't eat for weeks because of my father warned me of the sea boys. It was the funniest ass thing. You always had to laugh in his face. What a stupid... What are you going to say? He just couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat for like weeks because he was afraid the sea boys were going to come and get him. I said, oh my God, well that's pretty crazy, you know. And however, to him it was really real. Like it was a real thing. It had something to do with his case, and it caused him a terrible indigestion.
The homeopathics enable this person to cut some of that, like camouflage away the smoke screen.
Yeah, one thing you got to understand is that there's a two-stroke method to this that's really important. First, you've got to lock in the concept, the target. It's very important. If you don't do that, you're shot. And a lot of people, to a lot of doctors, and to a lot of practitioners, this almost seems like a bore or a pain in the ass, really, use the vernacular. Because like, look, I just want to give the guy stuff and tell him to go home, he feels better and all that stuff. Well, that's allopathy, you know, allopathic medicine. You want to practice, that's fine. You know, we have lots of doctors do that. You just come in, they got a stomachache, and they give them stuff, and the stomachache goes away. It comes back in 3 weeks because you never got core resolution. You never went really after it to do anything about it. But first you got to get those concepts straightened out. Very important. The next thing you have to do is you must plow in to all of the incidents that have happened concerning that concept. In other words, whatever the connection is that's broken, the reason why it's broken is because there's been many, many insults to that connection. And finally, at the bottom of it, you will get to the part of the program, to the first primary concept or missed concept that caused this break in the first place. And usually, the breaks are caused because of misconception or belief that if the individual breaks, he will gain in survival. He breaks because he thinks he's winning when he's losing. Splits up with the wife and goes and marries somebody else because he thinks that she's better. You know, he doesn't split up and goes with somebody else because she's worse, because he wants to punish himself. Everybody's always thinking for the one thing, the plus. I want to get better, so I do X. So it all comes down to the bottom line in the whole project of making somebody well is to find all the points where they thunk they won. That's why they keep it. That's why the guy sits there with the pain in his stomach and the headache. You're saying, what do you think you won? I mean, you tell me what you won, and I'll tell you, you know, in so many words and terms and programs, and I'll unwind and show you the relative viewpoints of your I won something that you really lost, which is hard for them to face. So it's an unresolved situation. It's a situation that the guy, but I won. Where's the brass band? You know, where's all my friends? How come people aren't flocking around me? The guy that went for the bucks. You know, he worked hard, he's got all the bucks. Wife's divorced. Takes all his money. Says, well, what the heck, you know? Or she says, here's the classic. I want you to spend more time with the kids. I'm out working, trying to make a living for you. That's what you want, isn't it? No, I want you to play with the kids. but I thought you wanted me to work, you know? These are guys with rheumatism and a pain in the neck, you know? She gives me a pain in the neck. That kind of stuff. No, there's an incredible amount of association that goes on. And they will give it to you. They'll identify it for you. Just ask them what their major complaint is. And that's what we have them do. We have them come in. There's an actual protocol program in here for you to take the major complaint. We are definitely, at this point, we're rehashing or, you know, recapping some of the things that we did last week. Some people who weren't here, we're going to catch up real quick. And the thing that you have to do immediately is to get that major complaint and get it right. Don't get 5 things. Get one thing. See, a lot of times you get people who are going upgrade. They're trying to run grade 6, and they don't even know it. They're getting this big concept, and they're going, okay, baby, and then it's flat. It's like the cream pie right in the face. The thing just runs right over them like a trolley car. I mean, there's no way they can handle that because the person hasn't been prepped to even reattach one little wire. Yet you're trying to go for the control box. Let's run the whole thing at once. You can't do that. One target. Okay, lady, what do you want? You got your apron on and the hat like you're at the grill cooking, hamburgers, right? What do you want? You want mustard on this one? You get one complaint to a customer. That's all. One target. You can't go see the mystic oracle and have him take care of all your sins in one shot. This is one where we shoot for one thing and we get one answer to that one problem. So, very important at first you get that major complaint. And you got to be very resolved. Where's the bulletin? Where's the bulletin? Anyway, here's a typical chain. I'm not trying to bypass the...
Yeah, that's the word of chain.
What's the definition of the word chain, Diane?
Chain?
Chain.
So, consequence of number.
Consequence of number. Very good. Okay. I've got to do some programs on you. Okay, for your... Pardon? No, that's right. That's good. But you yawned when I said chain, so it probably kicked into some chains that were undone. Undone chain. We don't need any of those. But you'll find a lot of people walking around. And many people have gotten old chains, just old ones. A 2-year-old chain, took it out and did it and, rectified the core on them and just blew them out. Wow, oh my God, because they were sitting on that. Guy wrote the chain, right? They come in and they say, oh yeah, I got a headache. And then you write the chain. That's not me. I mean, are they kidding? The chain, they wrote it. It's like looking in the mirror and saying, that's not me. Nah, that's not it. I don't look like that. I look like Truman Capote, and they say, that's not me. They make me laugh. They're the funniest ones. No, that's not me. So really, let me give you just, hold this in your hand for a second, and I want to give you this scale. Let's take SAS for instance. Here is, let's say the lowest number of the program, in the program. Sometimes you run the computer, you get, let's pick a 5 as the lowest number, 50 is the mid number, and 95 is the end number. Okay, now I will tell you exactly how this program works. It's excellent as far as gauging where the person's lag is, how many breaks they have, how tough a person they're going to be. Guy comes in, he says he's got headaches. In the core, it's stomach ache. But, very important point, look on the key for headaches. So, if it's over here, if headaches is over here, then it means that the person is really driven in to this acute symptom, and this is actually the cause of it, you see. Over here, if you find that the actual, what they complain about is on this end, this will be the cause of the core. However, the relationship still sits there. In other words, you have this headache that's really causing the stomach ache that's causing the headache syndrome, like that. In other words, these are linked inextricably, and these are linked inextricably. Depending on how far removed from the core you are, gives you your relative break point. In other words, you could say if somebody had 55 points was the headache and 50 points was the stomach ache, there's only 5 points off core. There's a very slight amount of breaks. So this is on this track. Now, there's other tracks depending on what. For instance, infrared, you may not even be anywhere near it. And you'll find that in infrared. Infrared takes a big swath, like whoosh, and then the person's like, they're way over there. And in fact, I just got this new salesman in here, Rick. I sent him out in a case, one of the first ones he did, and he did an infrared in this person, and I don't know why they bought the program, but he said, "Geez, that's not me." I said, "Well, let's look at her case," and I looked at the whole thing, and here she was just so far on the other side of the moon, She was sitting in there like in the Bahamas someplace, not even anywhere near. Like, in other words, her infrared bias was nowhere near what she thought was happening with her. There's no connection. Infrared is very close to the actual physical realm. Now, the reason why we do SAF first is because it's the closest track to the mental. If they're off on that one, holy jeez, you got problems. Let's say the guy has the core of his stomach ache, and we look for headache, and it's not even on the sheet. It's off, right up, bang, it's out here somewhere. You say, oh, this is going to be a real interesting one. Because if you understand the SAF program and protocol, this readout, this symptom awareness readout, is the input from them. They just told you that they have this headache. You tell me why when they got the headache on the form, they never filled it in with any intensity. The program is set up to pick up and put in their major complaint and deposit it in the core of the chain when it comes out, if there's no interference. Now, of course, we've had people interfere with the program.
Where they said stress numbers, refuses to appreciate problems, drugs, etc.
Yes, absolutely. Stress number also will tell you, if you look at how to effectively decipher an SAF 120, it'll tell you a lot about that kind of lag situation. They're on drugs, it gives you the amount of interference. The MH55A, which is the preview form that we use, did we go over that? About the drag number and all that stuff? When you figure out the drag number, you're figuring out the interference number is what you're getting there. How much interference is on that case. This is very important things for you to know, because if you don't know them, well, you're going to have a much harder time, and you're definitely not going to be able to predict whether you can make them well or not. Wouldn't it be interesting for you, by any, to say, let's say you get a cancer patient or something like that, and a person comes in, and you say, hey, give me 4.5 weeks. And then little by little, gradually, you saw the tumor shrink in proportion to the amount of time that you handled the person. Wouldn't that be the way to do it? I mean, doing it like Hopalong Cassidy in the dark, just shooting guns off and hoping that something gets better, when not even being able to observe the actual consequences of your actions. Is she getting better? Is she getting worse? Whatever is, really tough. It's a hard way to go. Let's say you get a person that comes in, they got cancer. Okay, right away, what kind of interference are you talking about? Are you talking about regular interference? You're talking about genetic interference. It's like big time stuff. This is not any little joke. This is the big time. You're talking about some major mechanisms involved here. And that mechanism, the amount of strength it has to interfere with her, obviously she doesn't want to have cancer, but you got to remember one thing, and one basic thing as well. She wanted something. That's why she has it. In other words, she's put herself into some sort of negative energy status, thinking that it was good for some reason. That's why she keeps pushing at it. Yeah, I need this. I just was talking to a lady the other day at that health food bar, who her husband, imagine Grizzly Adams as a maniac, Hi, Ben. He was putting like shotguns up to her head, loaded with the things cocked. He's drunk, but have these blackouts and everything. And, she was kind of commiserating with this other lady about all of her problems. Yeah. There's a lot of crazy, healthy people. No, this was something that he had done to her before. And she was explaining all these things of why she didn't have any money because her husband was drinking all the money away and all of this stuff. And so everybody was like looking at her and saying, "Why don't you leave?" Well, it was obvious why she doesn't leave. She thinks she's winning, obviously, even though she knows. Big part of her saying, "Well, geez, how could I do? I mean, somebody puts a gun up to my head. Suppose they slip or accidentally shoot my brains out, But somehow she thinks, well, wait a second. This is something I have to have for survival. A big, giant, maniac guy with a gun, up to my head will make me realize something someday. That St. Peter really doesn't exist. It was all just a joke. But this is what you have to get to, because these are the mechanisms. Remember, the mechanisms that the person uses for winning is what puts them into action. Think about how you feel sometimes. For instance, you're driving along, you're feeling good. You've got the pedal to the metal, you're really flying along the road. All of a sudden, cop stops. Gives you a $150 ticket, and now you're lost. And you're like, do you want to drive fast? No. You know what you say? I shouldn't have got up today. I should go slower. No, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go home and watch TV. I'm not going to, don't make any decisions about business, about, marital problems, anything, just bad day, bad luck, Immediately, when the person is thrown into a loss, they recede. They stop action. When you throw them into a win, they move. They're fast. They're reckless. So what you have to do in getting the major complaint is don't make them lose. I got a headache. Great. That's fantastic. Your other part of the program says that you have a stomach ache. I want to know, instead of making them do stomach or doing headache and never really getting to the real solution, because what's the sense of doing the program? I mean, you tell me what I should do with a program. Somebody says, yeah, they got a headache, and hands me a thing that says stomach ache on it. So what do we want me to do with this? This is ridiculous. I wouldn't have any real resolution myself if I was to run the program and say, yeah, we'll run it anyway, so what? Let's pray her headache gets better. or just say, screw the program. Just give her homeopathic number 7 for headaches, or 19. It says migraine on the bottle. Yeah, give her that shit. Doesn't make any sense. The other question that comes up is like, well, Jesus, the program wrong? We've done thousands and thousands and thousands of them. They're very, very accurate. And then again, the program is a readout of what she says. It's her thing. So what definitely has to be done is this core rectification. Once you get that, you can look at this thing. Pardon? Well, that's going to come out in the wash. You know what's going to happen? You're going to break all the way down. You're going to be doing the program. And this lady lied. She's lying. She didn't really want to be there, right? You get this thing out and you say, well, how does it relate? She can't see it for anything. You try to train her, you try to work with her, nothing's coming. Because she's a loser, see? She wants to lose. You know she's losing. She's not getting it. We have correction lists for that. The minute you don't get it after 2-3 times, bingo, you go on a correction list. Correction list says, okay, you really want to be here? Well, gee, actually, my husband sent me, I don't like doctors. I don't even like my husband. I was hoping to come here so I can get a divorce. You do, well, Stern was the big, I think one of the real big places where he made great strides was when he started doing correction lists. Because he was reaching these impasses where people were coming in and not really, being honest with them. Taking drugs, I forgot to mention that drug, that kind of stuff. The program kept coming up, drugs, like that. We've had people come in here for training. Come through the program, sit them down. The rules of the program are no drugs. Fine, no drugs. Hi. Like that. Think somebody, they can't learn anything. Do you know why you're not supposed to take drugs? Well, it makes me feel good and I'm more relaxed, but You know, I can't remember things. Or, you know, who are you? You know, what is this? What time is this plane leaving? You know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, I don't understand that there's a connection between learning and drugs. Like drugs, you know, immediately blank out all of your memory and you know, break into your system. So, let me turn your attention to this baby right here, which is, it says important, chain structure, chain resolution. It says the following is a schematic of energy, mass, and concept structure which make up disease condition and chain phenomena. What you're doing here, imagine, if you will, the black spot as being the disease case. Now just look at that black spot and look how unknown it is. You look at it, there's no information there. It's like looking at a TV screen that is not turned on. I mean, what is playing, Faina? Is it Laverne and Shirley? It's nothing. In other words, you say, well, look, I can't be very resolved about what's playing on this TV screen, mainly because I cannot see any of it, you know. So, what happens? We go in with a program of sorts. Some of the programs, as you go up the line, are extremely sophisticated. The infrared is extremely sophisticated at getting one of these little, you notice these lines coming out with a little white bit in there, yanking out a piece of information. But remember that all these little white bits are in a sequence. Now, have you ever gotten one of those little comic book things? And it's like sort of like in a little book, and you flip it. It's called flip comics, a flip book. And you go, ta, 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 and you see the thing doing all these little dances and things like that. Well, in a way, this is a flip picture, which means that each segment is a different part of energy or motion that gives you a whole part of the story. However, depending on the size of this mass here, it's a relative amount of ease at which you can figure out the mass. This is quirk, remember. Questions understood by intersecting retrievable knowledge. We retrieved this knowledge, and now we're going to intersect it back into the mass and figure it out. Now, let's face it. You get a cancer patient, this little piece of coal is about the size of ready. Okay? I know that you want to go in with your little pincers and pull out this little piece of information and go, I got it! You know, but what happens is the cancer patients, the people with cancer, are barring off on heavy genetic mechanisms. They're genetic curses. They're not just, I breathed in a little bit of dust, man, and, you know, now I'm going to die. I'll see it. You know, it's heavy stuff, okay? And I'm not saying you can't confront it. I'm not saying there hasn't been people on this planet who haven't been able to remit it, push it back, cut off, mow the grass, you know, there's a million things you could do with it, but it's kind of part of the reason why people are on planet Earth, you know, to figure this kind of thing out.
When we say genetic, do you mean they were born with it, or is it something that has entered the genetic code during their life?
It's part of a code break. When we talk about breaks, and we say, hey, you got a break, you know, somebody hits you with a chair or something. Well, you got a break in energy there, okay? And there's a definite reason for it, okay? When you talk about breaks, the more minute the breaks get in, let's say, structure, the more powerful they get in, let's say, ramifications. For instance, if you get a break in DNA RNA code, 19-737, and it says, a certain enzyme will move this way and that way. I mean, after a while, that's going to get you. You've got to fix a break in the DNA, RNA, okay? Which is not real easy to do, okay? In other words, what we're doing is we're looking at the relative quirk. Quirk-to-quirk comparison and being able to assess this. Now, obviously, what we have to do is do our MH55A assessments for drag number. In other words, how, I know Fanny is wrinkling or corrugating her eyes. It means that she doesn't understand that MH55A is the... Yes, you're in the middle. It makes it tough. but I will have Karen go over some of this stuff with you and explain to you what an MH55 is. It's a case estimate. It shows you just how hard it's going to be to work with the person, okay? But anyway, noticing this chain structure, there's something that's very, very important, and I will explain to you about as you look at that picture. It says the correct procedure for unlocking a chain is to blow the caps. The caps are the misunderstandings of relative energy motion in the environments cause the black body mass to build up and sustain. The caps are these things here. If you see in your picture, it's those little pieces of things. You've got to blow them. They are pictures, but they have to be resolved. You have to look at them and say, I know what that is. How many times have you gone into an environment and for an instant not really been able to discern what it is until you've locked your scanners on and say, oh shit, I know what that is. Or a person walking to you. Hey, who's that coming? You see the coat. Well, the jacket looks like so-and-so. The shoes look like so-and-so. Oh, it's neither. It's Charlie. Till they get into range, into view, okay? Once you get it into view, you blow the cap of that file, and that's, notice it's funneling down into the mass there. Almost like a tree, it looks like. The caps are misunderstandings of relative energy motion in the environment cause black body mass to build up. So underline the word misunderstanding. Caps are misunderstandings of relative energy motion. In other words, it's a misunderstanding of how one thing relates to another, how a stomach can relate to a head. It's a misunderstanding. I say, well, geez, I didn't know you'd throw up if you ate 49 bananas. Misunderstanding. If they knew on the 48th one, they'd stop eating them. Why? Because they want to win, remember. They don't want to lose. People don't want to get sick. They go out on a drinking binge because that's how you win. You get together with your friends, you have fun, you get sloppy, but you don't want to get run over by a pickup truck, You're laying in the hospital and saying, geez, I thought I won, Okay, a Safin, who is what we call Safin, is a person who is a patient, who used to be a patient but is now converted over to this type of thinking, never realized that having a bad liver could make his hands cold. Major complaint. For instance, we're just giving the example. Another Safin didn't know that he could actually produce warty growth on his hand by eating bananas. That's the allergy program. Our allergy program is to help people connect and say, geez, I didn't know it would do that. Like sore feet, for instance, I did on a guy once. And dog hair caused sore feet.